Hello everyone, I'm going to spend a second and talk on data and how we categorize data, at what confidence levels, and a little bit about data quality. Since there was a request to do a marker board kind of video, I figured I'd give one a shot and see. So there's a few light flaws, so please forgive those. They're not going to get fixed, but hopefully the information still gets conveyed well. You're going to see my shadow dancing around because me trying to stand in one place is like impossible. So let's talk about data right off the bat. Threat intelligence cares about data and cares about data quality. And one of the things we talk about a lot of times in threat intelligence and cybersecurity is what is the quality of the data. And a lot of times we will also express that via confidence levels. And it's important to classify it. And I have basically a 4-tier, 5-tier classification scheme that I use on a regular basis. That's rather my personal in-house way of looking at it, but it does help encompass the different types of data that you will run across in threat intelligence and where to put it and how to mature it up and then let it actually sunset over time. So, and it rather falls like this. So you have what I call hints, and you'll have signals, you'll have indicators or observations. And I use this carefully because this is used in a different context within the threat intelligence and cyber intelligence industry, but we're going to use it for this third tier, if you will. And then you're going to have what we call evidence. Now there's another tier past this that is called direct interaction. You will not get access to this most of the time, but it is your highest quality data. And confidence goes from 0% down to 80% plus as you decline into this. And it is meant to be used to promote data up to higher confidence levels and demote data over time as it ages out or sunsets. You can also slice this a little bit into, and should slice this into, inside and outside intelligence. And that's really important to understand. Much of your outside intelligence will consist of hints and signals towards activity, and you'll express it with that kind of verb. This data hints towards, and you'll explain the action or behavior. And a stronger version of that would be this data signals that a behavior or a pattern or something is emerging, versus I have indicators, I have made observations, I directly see this, or I have direct data that is no longer a hint or a signal, but is actually an indication of activity. And then of course it can bubble up to evidence. You have direct evidence or evidence of an action happening. So everything's kind of set from your point of view, which is the most important point of view as an analyst when you're performing analysis. Now, in a normal company structure, they will have ample information or access to inside intelligence. So they'll have, for example, evidence of an incident response that happened historically. They may have indicators like phishing or active recon, brute force, credential stuffing, account takeovers. All those can fall under indications or observations of behavior. They may see malformed packets. They may see form interactions. They may see things that are happening on endpoints. They may see scripts on servers. All those are either indicators and observations inside intelligence here, inside your environment, inside your network, or they're evidentiary in nature when you actually have those and have hashed them and verified them, they're authenticated. That's kind of the rule for evidence. Otherwise it falls to indicator. So if you can't, for example, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit, but if you cannot actually break down something to the part where you can authenticate and do so in a repeatable manner, then it doesn't meet the benchmark for being evidence. Even though it may have been an incident, let's say, that happened, but you weren't able to hash everything, you just know that an attacker got in because they released TrickBot and you found traces of TrickBot. You're like, okay, there's TrickBot indicators, but we could not find the TrickBot malware. You cannot count that as evidence. It doesn't meet the criteria. Now, if you had TrickBot binary there and you could see its behavior in the indications and observations area, and you found the actual binary and you were able to hash it and verify it, then you could claim that that particular binary for sure was evidentiary in nature, and anything that flowed from it could either be moved into the evidence category or stay as indicators, observations, depending on how much, one, work you want to put into it, and two, necessity that would drive that. Direct interaction, since I'm going down this road, Direct interaction is when you directly interact with the piece of data that you've collected. So in most instances, that is when an attacker is in the network and you stumble across them while they're still active and you interact with them to shut them down or otherwise try to prevent them from exfiltrating data. Those are direct interaction data points that you could easily collect, and they're your most confident level points because you were there, you were part of it. If you directly interact with network traffic or an attack that's on the outside perimeter of your network, such as someone trying to brute force their way in, again, you're having a direct interaction. It's your highest confidence that it happened, when it happened, where it happened, how it happened. All those four things actually are present. Otherwise, it is of less confidence. And there's a couple of other ways to express these. But that really is how inside intelligence works. And you'll see that many people is either in a SOC or in an intelligence program, they'll work heavily with inside intelligence. Now, there's some good upsides to that, and there's some down upsides to it. I should say upsides and downsides to be proper. This information is got the highest confidence level, but unfortunately, in the cycle of attack, from when an attack is conceived to the point where the attack is actually performed, most of the inside intelligence deals with an attack that has already happened or is happening. It's in an operational or in an attack phase. And that's the worst location to actually try to stop something because the attack has already matured at that point. That's where outside intelligence shines because hints and signals happen in the reconnaissance build and early operational stages of an attack before it actually gets to your environment. That's what hints and signals pick up on and why they're lower confidence. And I'll actually give some examples, but a hint is something that is very light, very much a trace, if you will. It is not directly attached to you. A lot of times it is 2 or 3 layers away. And a good example of a hint might be you find an attacker doing research on your company or your brand. You may also see them purchase data such as email credentials or email lists or just any kind of account information. There are criminal analysts that will package up marketing materials and basics, footprints on infrastructure, network diagrams, whatever they can put their hands on and repackage and sell that. In the hints category, when you see this kind of information, that's a hint that something might be happening, that an attack is being planned. It's not direct. You can't necessarily action on it other than take pre-steps to understand what that information might tell an attacker so you can predict in a way which way they might attack you. Now that can mature, especially if you see that grow. Let me make some more space here. And in the signal category, an example of that might be research turns into actual recon. So there's a mile of difference between research and recon. Research, I'm passive for the most part. I'm not impacting your network or any of your assets or even necessarily your trusted or third parties. But when it comes to signals and I start performing active recon, I'm actually pinging on the edges. I might be doing things more actively. I might gather information from your website. I might pull down a whole copy of it and then create a phishing kit around your brand or around your identity. I might pull reconnaissance to figure out when you take holidays or how you would, or what communities you're a part of, what you support, where you let your employees go to spend time. You know, that kind of information happens in reconnaissance, and that kind of reconnaissance is not a brute force script or a recon script probing your network edge, though that may happen there. That starts happening right here. That's the third step. In this outer signal area, you're seeing reconnaissance that signals activity. They're trying to figure out when you're most of the times at work, when you're not, again, what you support, what you don't support. They may pull your website down to recreate a phishing kit or build something around your identity, find communities or sharing groups you're part of so they can pretend to be them. All those are things that are signals of activity. You also may see some infrastructure setups here because at this point they're moving into the build/operate phase of an attack. And so as they build infrastructure, you might see knockoff domains. You might see domains that are knockoffs of your third parties or trusted vendors or trusted individuals that have access or interact with your network. All that would happen under signals. Now, normally that kind of outside intelligence is not gathered by a company. Frequently they rely on a provider or they try to make sure that they handle everything on the inside. But unfortunately, the attack is mature after this line. So everything up here is happening before the attack, and you have a chance to actually sever that. And if you will, in a way here, you might say that you have this kind of curvy line where you have hint information, you have signal information that is before the attack. And then once it gets to a certain point, once it gets here, they're operational. The attack is imminent or underway. And so your best chance to actually kill an attack, shut it off before it happens, is killing it way back here before it even gets to your environment. And if you can do that, you can successfully head off attacks before they get here and impact your environment in a major way. But let me get back to my examples of what's in each category. Let me erase this to make a little bit of room. Here we go. There we are. So, what is an indicator on that kind of scale? So phishing that actually starts impacting your mailbox becomes more indicator observation of activity. At that point, you're past the signal phase. They're moving into an active operational move, and they're actually attacking at that point. You just may not see it. When they start doing account takeovers, that's an indicator observation that you can start making. Someone actually took over an email account. Someone successfully phished. Someone got in and did a brute force against one of our outward exposed forms, and they were able to break in and do something, maybe not what they wanted, but they were able to get a location and a foothold. If they get in and they put a script down so they can get a reverse proxy or they can get a reverse shell, all those things start falling under indicators, observations, and rapidly bubble up into evidence as it causes an incident or causes damage to your environment. But at that point, it's too late. It gets very difficult to do anything at that juncture, which is why it's important to cut it off and sever it as early as you can. And so when we're collecting information, so I'm going to be contradictory here, but the least confident data becomes the most valuable. And that makes sense if you remember that diagram, that snake that I drew. See if I can draw this again for us. I should have left it up there. When you have hint data and signal data, this is your line where you can actually do something. Anything on this side prevents the attack from actually happening. Anything on the other side, oops, can't spell prevent. This is going to squeak. There we go. Get a P in there. Prevent. Already done. Anything on that line, anything in the hint and signal side, you can actually stop an attack. You can do prevention. Anything on the other side of it, the attack's underway or already happened. And that's important. So when you're collecting your data, you want to actually look at your hints and see when your hints can actually mature into a signal, when signals can mature into indicators. The better you can do that, the more you can move data up and down this chain of data collection, the better. So you see those hints, you see those basic research, you see some buy and sales of data. At a certain point, it will accumulate, it'll quantify itself and move up by quantity into a signal of activity. A single one-off buy over a, say, 3-month period is nothing. It is not even much of a hint. But when you see a cluster of 8, 9, 10, 12, 15, 20, 30 purchases or requests for information on a particular entity, then that hint matures by quantity into signal. At that point, there's a signal, a strong signal. Too many hints that have clustered. Now there's a strong signal that there's activity pointed at a particular individual or brand. And those signals, if they continue and are matched by phishing, infrastructure builds, active recon, credential stuffing, all those kind of activities, the signals will again quantify up into indications of activity. And it's outside intelligence that became inside intelligence that became very relevant to you. Because at that point, it is a pretty much damn good security that you're going to get hit. Now, the same thing happens. It could build up steam, and something could occur that actually will shut it down. When botnets get taken down, or when there's massive impacts to markets, or when there's a major activity that steers people away. So when Hafnium happened recently, the Hafnium activity, many attackers jumped on that particular series of exploits to take advantage of the momentum that was there. Because there was a lot of individuals out there that were potential victims that had not made changes to prevent this. Their on-premises exchange systems were vulnerable. And so things like that turn some attackers who are otherwise building up steam to make an attack of a different kind away to take advantage of that. And that could be a way that you would see indicators that may have been created actually fall back into signal intelligence and maybe even down into hints as the attention is no longer there. So it's a way to see things build up steam, basically, and move by quantity for sure into from hint into signal into observations, and unfortunately to evidence when the attack actually occurs. Now, the same thing again can happen the other way. By quantity, you build up and then you lose that quantity, it will go back and regress. Now, just like there are quantity-based indications of this or this kind of activity, in the arrays for each one of these, you can also have qualitative movement where very specific things bubble up a data point. For example, if you're getting hints that there are data purchases being made, and when you query those hints, you look at them in detail and you realize that in that information that was acquired was a full network diagram or the internal structure for how something is set up in that company, it immediately by quality moves up to signal and might even go right into indications of an attack. There are some pieces of data that are incredibly valuable that once an attacker has them, it is purely a matter of time before they get in. A good example of that would be an initial access sale. Initial access is a type of criminal who will get in the network and instead of exploiting it themselves, will leave a foothold that they can return to and then sell that access to someone else. A good proportion of ransomware attacks actually are born from that kind of activity alone. That's typically at a signal level, but when you see an initial access sale and you can match it to the person that you're worried about, it immediately moves up into indication by quality, right? It's a qualitative indicator at that point. And so you can kind of go back and forth. And unfortunately, if it actually executes, then it becomes evidence. If you're there, then it becomes a direct interaction. And the reason that I classify this way is that inside intelligence by itself is easy to use data points for. You see phishing, you get all the fragments of data that you're concerned about from your phishing. You see malware, you do the same thing. You see behavior, you do threat hunting. You do all these things and they become good inside indicators, good side data points that you can use in your intelligence program and track, but you miss the hints and signals. And hints and signals are by nature less confident, more frayed, more fuzzy if you prefer, but they need to be tracked and you need a way to mature up and down this cycle. And so keeping good data quality and understanding how things mature and how they can degrade is very, very important to actually doing active, important protection for a customer or for the person you work for, depending on your situation. So thank you for your time. This is a quick kind of whiteboard breakdown of the 5 levels, mainly 4, but 5 levels of data points that you can collect and why you should collect them at different levels with a few examples. Thank you for your time.